I think there's so many things that you said that I wanted to go back to, because when you look at how leaders have to make choices, we can point all over this city to institutions that are totally representative of leaders that did exactly what Secretary Baker spoke about. They made choices that, for the common good, for the greater good, that placed the future of this city and the long window that they looked into, the long future they looked into, above any personal interest of the time. So we're two things in Houston, I think. One is a collection of institutions really well led, strongly led, with people driving toward a future they can see, building important institutions. Then we're also a city where those same leaders are looking far into the future. But I can think of a couple of instances where, as we were approaching people about Baker Ripley and saying, we have this neighborhood, and you've heard about it, and it has all these problems, and we want you to make a great big investment in this thing that's completely broken, according to the current understanding. So the first person that we had that serious conversation with about why it was so important to make those investments in that neighborhood was Jack Blanton. Now, Jack, I think most everyone in this room knows how much he represents what's best about Houston. And I think his first reaction was, I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting for one like this. So that's the Houston we know, and those are the kinds of leadership choices we have made that make us show up so often on the positive maps about the next economy. So I'm a great fan of Catherine's as well, and I think the Center for Houston's Future has put out there, and we wanted her to be here, especially because I hope she'll say a few words when question time comes about that work. A lot of voices went into that work, and the things that you spoke about, we have choices about transportation, we have choices about education, we have choices about how we embrace newcomers. We've always been known as a welcoming city. We have to continue to do that. We have, and we will not, I mean, I think Bruce has said it very clearly, we cannot expect that we will get the federal help, the legislation we need on transportation, on immigration, we're not going to get the enabling policies that we long for in the short term. So what strikes me as so powerful in this metro moment is that we do have the capacity here to do so much that is constructive. And yesterday we spent time in a table of people from metro areas all over the country who have found a way. And this is what leadership looks like when they found a way. They've taken whatever the strengths were in their region. And those were very different because there were people there, you know, Detroit, LA. I mean, city's very different than Houston. But what leadership's been willing to do, what the commitments of leaders have been, is take what's available in your region, whatever strengths exist, put the people in charge of those resources at a table, get beyond your own institution and your own self-interest, and figure out how a future is built out of those elements. So it's going to look different everywhere. But what's hard and what's great and not so great about being a Houstonian right now is whenever you're in a table like that, it's so good here compared to other cities, where other cities are crafting entire programs around what to do with all their abandoned and foreclosed properties, where every neighborhood is a snaggletooth block, where every community is struggling to figure out how to have a tax base to support city services. Houston, that hurricane missed us, and because we made a set of choices. I think we've got, I think we talk so much about what's broken in education, and we ought to be. This is one area where I feel as though we ought to stop and just pause and acknowledge our ignorance. We absolutely have no idea what the education system should look like for the workforce we're trying to build, for the future we're trying to create. And we're still doing it the way we did it decades ago. Now, none of us go to work and do our work the way we did it decades ago. We have new tools, we have different technologies, we have whole new paradigms for interaction, new ways of gathering information, whole new ways of collecting data. But we send our children to school and they sit in a desk like prisoners inside of four walls with more technology in their pocket than the school has. This doesn't make any sense. And it's expensive because we spend a lot of money on the facilities, the buses, the infrastructure for the experience that is narrow, limited, and not at all about the future. So we should pause and say we have no idea. Because from that place, I think we can start to get an idea. And I think that, when I look at all the possibilities, all the raw materials for Houston to line up with the description Bruce has of what that economy could look like here, the raw materials are here. You know, and I just don't even like dogs. And there's actually, I do not like dogs, four-legged creatures, and apparently this is somebody's phone, you know, and I don't want to embarrass them or anything, but, you know, I don't like a dog barking in the middle of my impassioned plea for a better educational system. But I think I see the kinds of changes we're trying to make to education as tweaks and incremental changes, and they're not going to add up. And I feel like it'll cost us almost a generation and we can't afford that. So, then I want to go to one other thing that I think is most painful, excruciatingly painful about, and I will say this to all my colleagues in the room who are nonprofit folks. We all know this. We live in two very different worlds. On the one hand, we live in a world where we have to have intelligent conversations, and sometimes if we're really disciplined, we won't even be hysterical when we have them, about policies and changes and long views and things that will take a long time to make a difference. And we live in that world because if we don't, we're no good for the people that we're serving, whether we're serving them in education or serving seniors, or we're trying to reach a neighborhood that's in a cul-de-sac of misery at the end of the street and nobody knows. We have to engage in those policy conversations. We have to work on those long-term things. At the same time, if you're doing your job well, then you're very, very close to the people who need this shift now. And so, you know, at neighborhood centers we often say a child is only 3 once. And what we know about developmental practice, about child development, what we know needs to happen, you have this window.